Step out of the car, hands where I can see them. The command ripped through the still air of Foothill Boulevard like a gunshot. Officer Brody Kane's voice was loud, young, and reckless. The morning sun bounced off his mirrored sunglasses as he swung his baton against the Tesla's glass. The window shattered, spraying tiny diamonds across Elias Thorne's lap. "You think you can ignore an order, huh?" Kane snarled. Beside him, Sergeant Vance Keller adjusted his belt and grinned. "Another one of those Section 8 warriors in a spaceship," he muttered, voice dripping contempt. Elias didn't move. His pulse stayed steady, his breath slow. Trained calm from 1,000 missions that began just like this, with chaos. He tapped the hidden trigger on his steering wheel. The car's cameras began uploading everything to Tesla's remote servers. A small green light blinked, silent proof that the truth was recording itself. Kane leaned into the window frame, the smell of his chewing gum mixing with sweat and arrogance. "License and registration, or just attitude today, Chief?" Elias Thorne said nothing. He knew when to speak and when silence would hang heavier. Keller yanked the door open, pulled him out by the arm, and zip-tied his wrists. "You're under arrest for resisting a lawful stop." The charge was fiction, but the pain was real. The baton pressed into his ribs as they dragged him toward the cruiser. Elias caught his reflection in the Tesla's dented door. Shaved head, scar by the temple, blood beginning to bead at the corner of his lip. The chief of police was being treated like prey in his own city. Before going into this story, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. If stories like this matter to you, hit subscribe, give this video a like, and stay till the end. What happens next will change how you see justice. The handcuffs bit deep as they shoved Elias into the back seat. Kane pulled out his phone and started streaming live to a private group called Thin Blue Line NorCal. He smirked at the camera. "Got ourselves a tough guy," he said, flashing a crooked smile. The chat filled with laughing emojis. Keller leaned in from the front. "Smile for your fans, Chief," he whispered, not realizing who sat behind him. Elias stared through the cage divider, his calm unnerving them both. He'd seen this kind of swagger before on foreign soil, from men who thought power came from a weapon. They drove him toward North Station, sirens off, lights flashing anyway inside the cruiser. Kane kept narrating the show. This guy was speeding, thought his fancy car made him untouchable. Elias turned his head, looking out the side window as if measuring every second. He noticed landmarks, intersections, the ticking of the dashboard clock. Every detail mattered. Every word would be on record once the footage reached Tesla's secure cloud. The scar on his temple itched, a phantom reminder of Mosul, of the explosion that killed his team. He'd survived worse than this, but humiliation hits differently when it's your own badge on the line. At the precinct gate, Keller pulled him out roughly. "Welcome to North Station," he said. "Population you." Kane laughed, grabbing the back of Elias's suit jacket and pushing him through the door. "Careful," Elias said quietly, his first words since the stop. Kane stopped mid-stride. "What was that?" Elias looked at him, eyes steady. "You'll regret turning off that camera." The words landed flat, emotionless, but carried a weight Kane couldn't quite shake. Down the hallway, a flickering fluorescent light buzzed. The smell of mildew mixed with the metallic tang of cleaning chemicals. Kane kept smirking, but his grip tightened. Keller opened a steel door that led downstairs. "VIP suite," he said, gesturing to a cell with a taped-over security camera. Elias stepped inside without resistance. Kane yanked off the zip ties and threw them onto the floor. "Sit tight, Chief. We'll see how long that calm lasts." He closed the door, locking it with an exaggerated twist. Elias sat on the cold concrete bench, rolling his wrists, feeling the circulation return. He looked up at the small barred window near the ceiling, where sunlight leaked through in thin stripes. Dust floated like ash. He had trained for hostage crises, for battlefield interrogation, for nights where silence was the only ally. But this was different. This was home. These were supposed to be his men. Outside, Kane and Keller joked with another officer by the vending machine. "Man didn't even flinch," Kane said. "Probably one of those paper chiefs, desk warrior type." Keller shook his head. "Nah, that look. He's done time somewhere. Bet you he's ex-military." Kane laughed. Then he should have known better than to mouth off. Neither noticed the red light on the Tesla key fob Elias had kept in his pocket, still transmitting quietly. Hours passed. No paperwork, no phone call. Elias lay back on the bench and stared at the cracks in the ceiling. He remembered a briefing room in Kabul, the sound of helicopters lifting off. He'd promised his team that leadership meant walking through fear without flinching. He'd meant it then. He meant it now. The night grew long. Somewhere upstairs, laughter echoed. He caught fragments, slurs, jokes, Kane's name repeated with mock applause. He turned his head to the wall and began tracing words into the dust with one finger. Several days. No water. No charge. No name. He paused, then added, "But they forgot the cameras never sleep." As dawn approached, his jaw was stiff, his neck sore. A young black officer appeared at the door, barely in his mid-20s, uniform too big at the shoulders. Theo Ramirez. He slid a bottle of water through the slot without a word. Their eyes met. Theo's hands trembled. Elias spoke softly. "You know who I am." Theo nodded. "I do, Chief." Elias didn't answer. He just nodded once. Slow, deliberate. It was enough. Moments later, the heavy door opened again. Vance Keller entered, holding a brown paper bag. "Breakfast," he said, tossing it onto the bench. The sandwich inside was moldy, sour smell filling the room. Elias picked it up, examined it like evidence, and placed it on the floor beside the door. Keller grinned. "You'll eat when you're hungry enough." He turned to leave. Elias's voice stopped him. "You ever been to Mosul, Sergeant?" Keller frowned. "What?" Elias's gaze didn't waver. "Didn't think so." The sergeant slammed the door. When footsteps faded, Elias took a deep breath, steady as a man settling into meditation. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "They think this is darkness. They haven't seen mine." Outside, the morning sun began to rise over Oakland, spilling light across the cracked pavement and flickering neon signs. The city carried on, unaware that its chief of police sat in a basement cell, silent, waiting, and recording everything. The evidence was already in motion, climbing through fiber cables toward a secure cloud server hundreds of miles away. The trap the officers had built for him was already turning on them, inch by inch, bite by bite. And somewhere in the distance, on a computer screen, soon to glow in internal affairs, a notification would appear. Tesla upload complete. The second morning came slow and gray. Light from the narrow window crawled across the concrete, cutting the cell in half. One side shadow, one side cold sunlight. Elias sat upright, back straight, hands resting on his knees. He hadn't slept. Every sound above him, the hum of old vents, the slam of lockers, the distant laughter of officers changing shift, was another reminder of where he was. He had once commanded task forces that moved through war zones without losing a man. Now he was trapped in his own precinct, treated like a suspect in a city he'd sworn to protect. His throat was dry, lips cracked, mind sharp. He counted the minutes, the patterns of boots walking the corridor, the order of the keys jingling on each belt. He was mapping the rhythm of captivity when footsteps stopped at his door. He didn't turn. The small slot opened and a chilled water bottle slid through. "It's me," a voice whispered. Elias looked up. Officer Theo Ramirez stood there, nervous eyes darting down the hallway. "I know who you are, Chief." His voice trembled but carried an edge of courage. Elias nodded once, saying nothing. The young man swallowed hard and whispered, "They said not to talk to you, but what they're doing isn't right." Elias reached for the bottle, the coolness shocking against his palms. Go back upstairs, he said quietly. Don't let them see you down here. Theo hesitated, then whispered, You'll get out of this. Elias met his eyes. I already am. The slot closed with a soft click. A few hours later, the door banged open. Sergeant Vance Keller filled the frame, his bulk blocking the light. Rise and shine, Chief, he said, tossing a brown paper bag onto the floor. Breakfast. Elias looked at the bag, but didn't touch it. The sour smell of mold reached him before the words did. You serve this to everyone, or am I special? Keller smirked. You're all kinds of special. He leaned against the door frame. You know, back when I started, a guy like you wouldn't even make it to the academy. Now you're sitting in my cell. Progress, huh? Elias's expression didn't change. You think this uniform gives you power? He said calmly. It only magnifies what was already inside. Keller's grin faded. Careful, Chief. Words like that make people disappear. Elias's eyes met his without fear. People like me don't disappear. We multiply. Keller's jaw tightened. He kicked the bag closer. Eat it, or don't. Nobody cares. Then he slammed the door and walked off, his boots echoing in retreat. Elias picked up the sandwich. Mold bloomed across the bread like gray frost. He turned it over, studying it as if it were a clue. The crust was dry, the inside damp. He wrapped it neatly in the paper bag, slid it beneath the bench, and whispered, Evidence. Every action was deliberate, every humiliation catalogued. Hours dragged. He scratched small lines into the wall, one for each hour, 4 vertical, 1 diagonal. The cell smelled of rust and wet concrete. Somewhere above, a radio played country music, faintly through the vents. He could almost see the officers laughing, sharing coffee, unaware that their every move had already been captured by the Tesla's 8 cameras. He remembered pressing that upload command, the faint vibration from the steering wheel, as confirmation. That signal was his lifeline, invisible but unstoppable. As afternoon wore on, Kane's voice echoed from the hallway. You still alive in there, Chief? He knocked on the door 3 times, mocking rhythm. Elias said nothing. You think your fancy car's going to save you? Kane called. No one's buying that footage. Trust me, we own the story now. Elias closed his eyes. He'd heard those words before, in interrogation rooms overseas, from men who believed truth could be buried under fear. He let Kane talk until the footsteps faded again. Then he leaned back, breathing slow, whispering the phrase he'd told recruits years ago. Silence is strategy, not surrender. Evening approached, and with it the first flicker of hope. A faint vibration buzzed against Elias's wrist, his smart watch reconnecting to a network. He moved his hand slowly, pretending to stretch. The screen blinked once before dimming, but it was enough. A brief flash of notification. Tesla upload 99% complete. He closed his eyes and let the quiet wash over him. The truth was almost free. Night deepened. The narrow window turned black. The only sound was the low hum of a faulty light bulb flickering above. Elias pressed his back to the wall and let memories drift. Mosul, the flash of white light, the ringing in his ears, the faces of his squad fading into dust. He remembered crawling through rubble, half-conscious, hearing his name called by a medic who never made it out. Since then, every decision, every command, every word had been a promise to the dead. Never let fear lead. Now fear was what they wanted. He wouldn't give it. In the depths of night, the hallway filled with footsteps again. Kane's laugh was unmistakable. "Low battery, huh?" someone said. "Yeah, right." Then the sound of a soda can popping open. "Cheers to the chief," Kane joked. "Let's teach him respect." Elias heard the metallic clatter of something dropped, a baton rolling across the floor. More laughter. Then the voices faded. He waited several minutes before moving again. Calm returned like oxygen. He sat in the half-dark, tracing the shape of the water bottle cap with his thumb. The bottle was cold no longer, but it symbolized something simple. He wasn't forgotten. Somewhere upstairs, someone, perhaps Isabel Vargas, was noticing the gaps, the missing footage, the broken chain of command. He didn't need to scream for help. The evidence would do the talking. As dawn approached, Elias rose and faced the wall. The new light stretched down the concrete, pale gold cutting through gray. He touched the scar on his temple, feeling the old pain stir. Then, slowly, he began to speak aloud, voice barely above a whisper. "To every officer who thinks a badge makes him untouchable, remember this cell. Remember how silence sounds when it's recording your sins." The key turned in the lock again. This time, Kane entered alone. His uniform was wrinkled, eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. "You're not talking much, huh?" he said, pacing. Elias didn't answer. "You know, we could make this simple. You apologize for mouthing off. We let you go. Call it a misunderstanding." Elias studied him like a puzzle. "You want me to lie to make you comfortable?" Kane scoffed. "You think anyone's going to believe your side?" Elias smiled faintly. "I don't need them to. I have the truth." Kane laughed once, uneasy, and walked out without another word. When the heavy door shut again, Elias leaned his head against the wall, eyes half closed. The morning light finally reached the floor at his feet, warm and bright. It wasn't freedom yet, but it was a signal. The outside world was still moving, and soon it would see. He whispered to the empty room, "Let them have their darkness. I'll wait for the light." Upstairs, the internal affairs inbox pinged with a new message. Tesla's servers had finished syncing. The upload was complete. 8 angles, full audio, and GPS data stamped down to the second. The file subject line read simply, "Foothill Incident, Chief Thorne," and with that, the countdown to truth began. Dawn broke clean and bright over Oakland, sunlight bouncing off glass towers as Internal Affairs Captain Isabel Vargas arrived early. Coffee in one hand, phone in the other, the message on her screen froze her mid-step. Tesla upload complete. Foothill Incident. She opened the encrypted file. 8 camera angles, crisp as daylight, played across her monitor. The Tesla's front, rear, side, and cabin feeds. She watched in silence as Officer Brody Kane swaggered up to the car, baton raised. "You think you can ignore me, boy?" His words cracked through the speakers like a whip. She flinched. The footage showed Elias Thorne's calm, the steady steering, the speedometer locked at 41 in a 45 zone. Then came the shatter. The baton smashing glass, the slur, the zip ties, the humiliation. Isabel's chest tightened. She clicked audio extract. Kane's voice returned, whispering to his partner, "Let's teach this kid a lesson." That was it. The kind of phrase that ended careers. She leaned back, heart pounding, staring at the paused frame. Elias's face half lit by the dashboard, his eyes steady. The chief of police had been assaulted under his own badge. She opened another tab and pulled Kane's personnel record. Recently out of the academy, ex-Marine, glowing evaluation from Sergeant Vance Keller. She didn't need a file to know the type. Young, angry, untouchable. The Discord notification in the file's metadata caught her attention. Thin blue line, NorCal, private channel, dozens of members. She pressed her lips together, whispering, "Got you." She was in the interrogation wing. The hallway was quiet, only the hum of lights and the faint murmur of voices from behind one-way glass. Keller sat across from her, arms crossed, a smirk tugging at his mouth. "Captain Vargas, early start." She placed her folder on the table, her tone calm. "I received the Tesla footage." His smirk faltered slightly. "What footage?" "The one showing you assaulting your own chief." Silence filled the room. Keller leaned back. "Must be some kind of tech glitch," he said, scratching his tattooed wrist. "Those fancy cars record everything. Half the time, they misread light patterns." Isabel folded her hands. The light pattern said, "Let's teach this kid a lesson. Your voice, Sergeant." He shifted in his chair. "Context matters. So does intent," she replied, her voice steady but sharp. "And yours is on record." Meanwhile, down in the basement, Elias sat on his bench, his body aching, but spirit unbroken. The morning light cut through the slit window again, a faint gold line reaching the wall where he'd been marking time. He didn't know what hour it was, but he knew someone, somewhere, had the file. He trusted Isabel. She had been one of his first recruits when he took command. An incorruptible investigator who saw through politics and ego. He breathed slow, steady. His smart watch buzzed faintly again. A notification pulsed once. "Sophia Hale, secure channel open." He smiled just a little. He adjusted his wrist to hide the glow from the light. Sophia Hale, his old friend and legal ally, the sharpest courtroom mind in the Bay. He tapped twice, activating a coded audio ping somewhere across town. In a glass-walled office in Uptown, Sophia saw the signal appear on her encrypted dashboard. "He's alive," she whispered. Back upstairs, Isabel pulled up Kane's latest report and found a glaring inconsistency. A timestamp for body cam failure logged shortly before the stop occurred. That alone was policy violation. She opened the recovered data file. The final seconds of corrupted body cam footage Tesla's cameras had captured reflected in the window. It was faint but clear. Kane's hand, Keller's voice. Another one of them. She froze the frame, replayed it, then closed the laptop. That line wasn't a glitch. It was motive. She entered her report into the secure system. Preliminary findings indicate excessive force, unlawful detention, tampering with evidence, and racially motivated misconduct. She hesitated, then added, "Victim, Chief Elias Thorne." Her hand trembled only once before hitting send. Downstairs, Elias leaned his head against the wall, eyes closed, whispering quietly as if to the concrete itself. "They'll see it soon. All of it." The door opened, and Keller appeared again, this time holding a clipboard. "Congratulations, Chief. You're getting a hearing tomorrow. Maybe the judge will autograph your cuffs." Elias didn't move. "Tell Kane the footage is live," he said softly. Keller's face twitched. "What footage?" Elias finally looked at him, calm and precise. "The one your reflection gave away." For the first time, Keller's composure cracked. He slammed the clipboard down and left. Moments later, Elias opened his hand. Inside was a small, torn piece of the sandwich bag, folded tight. On it, in faint pencil from his smartwatch stylus, he'd written, "Isabel, Tesla, Discord, threats." He slid it into a crack beneath the wall, knowing Theo would find it when he brought water again. He didn't need to shout to fight back. Truth had already left the cell. As afternoon wore on, Isabel's phone vibrated again. An anonymous upload link traced to a temporary relay server. She opened it carefully, half expecting malware. Instead, she saw text messages. "Snitches get stitches, Chief. Keep quiet, or we leak your record." It was Kane's burner app, the same one tied to his Discord alias. Elias had forwarded the screenshots through a hidden legal channel Sophia had set up months earlier for whistleblowers in her office. Sunlight broke through the blinds, cutting across her desk as she looked at the images. Each message was a nail in a coffin. She exhaled slowly, whispering, "You just buried yourself, Kane." Across town, Sophia received the same files. She read them twice, expression hardening. She picked up her phone and called the courthouse clerk. "Prepare an emergency writ. I want a hearing tomorrow morning. Name, Elias Thorne." Her voice carried that firm confidence of someone who'd fought 100 uphill battles. Yes, that Elias Thorne, the chief. Evening descended at North Station. Kane paced the hallway, fidgeting with his phone, eyes darting. "You think she bought it?" he asked Keller. The sergeant shrugged. "If she didn't, we'll know soon enough." Kane wiped sweat from his temple. "He's going to talk." Keller shook his head. "Doesn't matter. Who's going to believe him? We're the cops." Kane forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow. The truth had already left the building. In internal affairs, Isabel watched the final render of the Tesla footage upload to the case server. 8 angles, synced audio, GPS tracking, and a perfect timeline showing 0 probable cause. She leaned forward, typing her final note for the file. "Video integrity confirmed. Recommend immediate release and investigation of involved officers." She saved the document, locked the terminal, and sat back. Outside her window, the setting sun washed Oakland in copper light, casting long shadows across the skyline. She whispered to herself, "Hold on, Chief. We've got you." Back in the cell, Elias heard footsteps again, lighter this time. Theo Ramirez appeared at the slot, eyes wide, cheeks flushed. "Sir," he whispered, "Internal Affairs. They know." Elias nodded once, his voice low but steady. "Then tomorrow, the dark ends." As the night deepened, a thin beam of light from a distant street lamp fell through the window, landing across the words Elias had scratched into the wall. "Justice finds its own way." The cell was silent, but above ground, the storm had begun. Morning broke clean and bright, sunlight spilling across the steps of the Alameda County Superior Court. Reporters gathered early, their voices blending with the hum of cameras warming up. Word had spread overnight. Oakland's police chief, Elias Thorne, was about to appear in court as a defendant. Inside, The courtroom buzzed with low tension. Prosecutors whispered, public defenders murmured, and in the front row, Internal Affairs Captain Isabel Vargas sat straight-backed, a silent anchor in the chaos. The air felt heavy with anticipation, the kind that builds before a storm. Then the door opened, and Elias walked in, dressed in a simple black suit, his hands free, head high. He moved with that measured calm that comes from years in the field. Eyes steady, posture unbroken, no badge on his chest, no insignia, just a man reclaiming his name. The bailiff announced, "Case of Thorne versus State of California," and the room fell quiet enough to hear the hum of the ceiling lights. Judge Margaret Lang took her seat, silver hair neatly pinned, expression unreadable. "Let's proceed," she said. Sophia Hale rose for the defense, every step controlled. Her presence commanded attention. A tall woman in a dark navy suit, voice firm but measured. "Your Honor," she began, "we intend to show that the arrest of my client was not only unlawful, but deliberate. A coordinated act of humiliation against the sitting chief of police." The prosecutor started to object, but the judge raised a hand. "Continue." Sophia pressed a button on the table. The courtroom lights dimmed, and the screen behind her flickered to life. 8 panels appeared at once, the Tesla's cameras. The jurors leaned forward instinctively. Kane's patrol car came into view, lights flashing. The video rolled. Kane's voice thundered from the speakers. "Step out of the car. Hands where I can see them." The shattering of glass echoed in the room. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Elias sat still, hands folded, eyes fixed on the footage. He didn't need to relive it. The truth was reliving itself for him. Sophia let the silence stretch after each strike of the baton, each racial slur. Then she turned to the jury. "You heard it with your own ears," she said quietly. "You saw the window smashed without cause. The chief was driving at 41 miles per hour. The system he led turned against him, and now you'll see what they did after." She cued another clip, the sound of Kane laughing as Elias was zip-tied. Keller's voice followed. "Another one of them." The judge's pen paused mid-note. Sophia looked up, her voice low but cutting. "Another one of them. Not another suspect. Not another offender." Those were words of prejudice, not policing. In the front row, Isabel watched Keller's face on the screen, pale under courtroom light. The audio bled into the Discord recording. Kane's live stream, his own laughter, the cheering emojis from his colleagues, the sick entertainment of a man believing he was untouchable. Sophia turned to the prosecution table. "Would the state like to explain this?" The prosecutor hesitated, glanced at the judge, then said, "The department denies knowledge of any live broadcast." Sophia didn't smile. She simply said, "Then allow me to enlighten the department." She switched the feed again. Tesla's GPS overlay lit up, a perfect trail of the cruiser's route. Every turn, every stop. "Technology doesn't forget," she said softly. The judge leaned forward. "This evidence verified." Isabel rose from the gallery, voice steady. "Yes, Your Honor. Internal Affairs has confirmed chain of custody, timestamps, and metadata. None of it was altered." The judge nodded once. "Proceed." Sophia opened a folder and pulled out printed screenshots. Kane's burner messages. "Snitches get stitches, Chief." The crowd stirred. "Keep quiet, or we leak your record." She placed them before the judge. "These were sent while my client sat chained in a basement cell. Camera covered with tape, no legal counsel, no booking record, and no phone call. That is not policing, Your Honor. That is a crime." At that moment, Kane, seated at the defense table for his own pending disciplinary review, dropped his gaze to the floor. The color drained from his face. Keller shifted in his seat, eyes darting toward the exit. The judge turned to them. "Officers, is there anything you'd like to say?" Neither answered. Only silence filled the room. Sophia turned to Elias, then back to the court. "For several days, the chief of police was treated like a criminal by men who swore an oath to serve under his command. He stayed silent, not because he was powerless, but because he believed in the process, because he believed the truth would surface. And here it is." She paused, her tone softening. "When a man wears a badge, it should not grant him permission to abuse power. It should remind him of the weight of responsibility that comes with it." The judge removed her glasses, rubbed the bridge of her nose, and looked directly at the prosecution. "I've seen enough." She turned to Elias. "Chief Thorne, you are hereby released from all custody, effective immediately. You will be provided full access to departmental records relevant to this case, and this court will convene a disciplinary inquiry for all involved officers." The gavel struck once, sharp and final. A murmur spread through the room. Elias rose slowly. The camera zoomed in as he buttoned his jacket and turned toward the gallery. His voice, calm but resonant, carried through the chamber. "I am Elias Thorne, Chief of the Oakland Police Department." The air shifted. "I took this job to clean house, not to be worshipped, but to rebuild trust. That starts today." He looked toward Kane and Keller, "and it starts with accountability." Reporters outside caught the moment he stepped through the courthouse doors. The bright sunlight hit him square in the face, forcing a squint, but he didn't shy away. The crowd erupted. Questions, flashes, microphones. He didn't answer any of them. He just kept walking, each step deliberate. Behind him, Kane was escorted out separately, head down, trembling hands cuffed. Inside, Sophia gathered her papers, exhaling for the first time all morning. Isabel met her at the aisle. "We did it," she said quietly. Sophia gave a small nod. "No," she replied. "He did. We just turned on the lights." That afternoon, Elias returned to headquarters. The corridors fell silent as he entered, every officer watching. Some whispered, others turned away. He paused in front of the department's wall of honor, a row of framed photos of fallen officers, all men who once believed in the badge. His reflection stared back, glass fractured by the glare of afternoon sun. "Let's start over," he said softly, to no one in particular. By evening, his official statement was everywhere, broadcast live, replayed across the country. No man is above the badge, and no badge is above the law. The footage cut to Kane being led out of North Station, the Discord server under federal lock, and Keller's badge surrendered. Across Oakland, the story spread fast, carried through screens, radios, and whispers in barbershops and cafes as the sun dipped behind the bay. Elias stood in his office overlooking the city. He loosened his tie, exhaled, and let the quiet fill the room for a long moment. He just looked at the skyline glowing gold against the water. His phone buzzed, a message from Sophia. "You changed the story," he typed back. "No, the truth did." Then he set the phone down, turned off the lights, and stood in the dark. The reflection of a free man looking back at him. Morning came sharp and clear, sunlight cutting across the glass walls of Oakland Police Headquarters. Every officer in the department sat shoulder to shoulder inside the briefing auditorium. The air was thick with unease, the kind that fills a room before a reckoning. On the stage stood Chief Elias Thorne, dressed in a plain gray suit with no rank pins, no ribbon bars, no pretense. Behind him, a large LED screen glowed white, waiting. The room buzzed with nervous whispers until the door clicked shut, and the sound of silence spread like a wave. Elias looked across the sea of faces, some curious, some defiant, some ashamed. Then he spoke, his voice low and calm. "What you're about to see isn't rumor. It isn't politics. It's truth. And truth doesn't need permission to speak." He pressed a button on the remote. The screen flickered to life. 8 synchronized camera feeds filled the wall. Tesla footage, body cam reflections, Discord messages, timestamp overlays. Kane's laughter echoed through the speakers. "Step out of the car." Smash. Section 8 warrior in a spaceship. The audio hit like a gut punch. Even the seasoned officers winced. Elias didn't move. He let the entire thing play from beginning to end. Every second, every word. No narration, no commentary. When the video ended, he stood still in the heavy quiet that followed. That, he said finally, was not the act of two bad cops. It was the symptom of a disease we've ignored for too long. He walked to the edge of the stage, hands clasped behind his back. Every one of you took an oath to serve the people of Oakland. Not the badge, not each other. The people. Somewhere along the way, some of us forgot that. His eyes moved slowly across the crowd, landing on a few familiar faces. Those who had laughed in the Discord channel. Those who had watched the live stream in silence. I won't ask for apologies, he continued. I'm asking for accountability. He clicked again. A list of names appeared on the screen. 12 officers linked to the private Discord group. These 12 are suspended effective immediately pending investigation, he said. Lieutenant Keller and Officer Kane are terminated with cause. Murmurs rippled through the auditorium. One officer stood up, his face pale. Chief, you can't just... Sit down, Corporal, Elias said quietly, without raising his voice. The man obeyed. From this moment forward, Elias continued, every patrol unit in Oakland will operate under AI-secured body cameras. No officer will be able to delete, pause, or disable recording. Every frame will be stored on an encrypted federal server. If your camera fails, you don't patrol. He let the words settle. Second, effective next month, all sworn officers must reside within the city limits. No more commuting from the suburbs to police neighborhoods you don't understand. You live where you serve, or you find another department. The silence in the room was absolute. For years, Oakland officers had lived miles away, detached from the streets they patrolled. Elias knew this policy would ignite outrage. But reform never came cheap. This isn't punishment, he said evenly. It's restoration. You can't protect what you refuse to be part of. Then he turned back to the screen and pulled up Kane's personnel file. This young man, Elias said, pointing to the photo, was in his late 20s, ex-Marine, recently out of the academy. He believed he was untouchable. He wasn't born corrupt. He was trained into arrogance. He paused, voice softening. We built that arrogance. We rewarded it with silence. And silence is what kills departments faster than bullets ever could. In the second row, Isabel Vargas watched, her face unreadable. She had seen this moment coming, had warned Elias how hard it would hit morale. But even she felt the chill of truth as his words echoed off the walls. Elias stepped away from the podium. You want to wear this badge, earn it every day. You want to be part of this uniform. Then start by facing your reflection. He turned the screen black, then said simply, "Dismissed." No one moved. For nearly a full minute, the auditorium stayed frozen. Then, one by one, officers began to rise, some clapping hesitantly, others lowering their heads in shame. Elias didn't wait for applause. He walked out through the side door, sunlight pouring across the polished floor as the door swung shut behind him. Outside, in the hallway, Isabel caught up. "You know this is going to set the Union on fire," she said. Elias nodded. "Let it burn. Maybe we'll see what's left when the smoke clears." That night, while most of the city slept, Kane sat alone in a holding cell on suicide watch. The bright white light above him buzzed softly, unblinking. He had been charged with false arrest, evidence tampering, and civil rights violations. The weight of it pressed on him like a closing door. Late that night, the guard found him slumped against the wall, shoelaces tied into a rough knot. Elias received the call. He didn't speak for a full minute. Then he said quietly, "Document it properly. Every detail." Morning came gray and hollow. The department woke to the news, whispering through corridors like cold wind. Keller sat in an interview room with 2 federal investigators, his hands clasped tightly when they read him the list of charges. He laughed once, short and bitter. "Guess the chief won," he muttered. The lead agent looked at him. "No," she said, "the law did." By midday, Keller was officially terminated, his pension revoked, his firearms license stripped. In the weeks that followed, he took a job guarding a supermarket, his badge replaced by a plastic name tag. In the afternoon, Elias stood before the city's press, the same steady calm in his voice. "Officer Kane's death is a tragedy. No reform is painless, but silence is a greater sin than loss. We owe the people of this city honesty, even when it costs us." Cameras flashed. A reporter called out, "Chief, do you regret the crackdown?" Elias met her eyes. "Regret? No. Regret is what built this problem. I intend to fix it." That evening, he walked the halls of headquarters alone. The building felt lighter somehow, quieter. On his way out, he stopped by the memorial wall again. Beneath the framed photographs, he placed a folded piece of paper that read, "Reform begins here." At dawn, he drove past Foothill Boulevard, the same stretch where everything began. The street was quiet now, washed in soft gold light. The shards of broken glass from that morning had long been cleaned away, but the memory still shimmered like heat on asphalt. He slowed, pulled over, and sat for a moment, hands resting on the wheel. His reflection in the windshield looked older, more human. He whispered to the empty air, "You can't heal what you hide." Then he started the engine and drove toward the rising sun. By the time he reached headquarters again, officers were already reporting for duty, body cams blinking green, AI systems online, a new protocol, a new beginning. Elias stood at the entrance and watched them file in. Some nodding, some avoiding his gaze, but all of them wearing the weight of the moment. Change had begun, not with applause or slogans, but with quiet, disciplined truth. And though no one said it aloud, every officer knew that morning would be remembered for years. The day their chief turned the mirror around and made the badge answer to the light. In the weeks that followed, the city simmered under a dry spring sun. By midday, the air outside Oakland Police Headquarters was alive with chants, bullhorns, and camera crews. The Union had gathered, hundreds strong, waving signs that read, "Traitor Chief, protect the blue, and hands off our own." Elias Thorne watched from the glass window of his office, standing in the light that spilled across his desk. The voices outside rose like a tide. A fake Tesla, painted silver with cardboard panels, burned in the street, smoke twisting up into a perfect blue sky. The acrid smell of melted plastic seeped through the vents. Inside, the building was silent, except for the rhythmic thud of drums from the protest. On the floor below, officers lingered by the elevators, uncertain whether to join the crowd or stay out of sight. The divide was visible now. Those who believed in reform and those who didn't. Elias folded his hands behind his back and whispered, almost to himself, "Let them scream. It's the sound of change, fighting to live." A knock came at the door. Captain Isabel Vargas entered. Crisp uniform, no smile. "Chief, the union president's demanding a meeting. They're saying the new residency rule violates labor rights." Elias didn't turn. "And the AI body cams, they want them scrapped. They claim constant surveillance kills morale." Elias finally faced her. "Morale doesn't die from cameras, Isabel. It dies from guilt." She nodded once. "I'll relay that." She paused before leaving. "They'll go to the press, sir." Elias exhaled slowly. "So will the truth." By midday, the chants grew harsher. Someone spray-painted "Snitch Chief" across the front steps. Another threw a smoke flare toward the entrance before being pulled back by fellow officers. The line between protest and rebellion blurred. Inside, Elias watched through the tinted glass as the fake Tesla collapsed under its own heat, flames licking the hood where someone had scrawled his name. He didn't flinch. He'd seen worse fires, some made of gunpowder, others made of hatred. Later that evening, the building quieted. The protesters dispersed when the street lights came on, leaving behind scorched asphalt and torn signs fluttering like ghosts. Elias loosened his tie, glanced at the empty space on his chest, and grabbed his keys. "I'll take a drive," he told Isabel. "Alone." She hesitated. "Sir, maybe not tonight." He looked at her, voice low but final. "If I'm asking my officers to face this city, I should be able to walk through it." He drove east, windows down, the warm air carrying faint music from street corners, past 85th Avenue. The lights dimmed and the pavement cracked. Deep East Oakland, the part of the city forgotten by budgets and policy debates, but never by struggle. His headlights caught old murals, corner markets, and kids playing under dim street lamps. When he turned onto a narrow cul-de-sac, the address he sought came into view. A faded mobile home with an American flag in the yard. He parked, turned off the engine, and stepped out into the soft buzz of crickets. Linda Kane was waiting on the porch, her hair pulled back, face pale from grief, cigarette glowing between her fingers. The mother of the young man who'd arrested him, now widowed by her son's own actions. She didn't invite him closer. "You got nerve showing up here," she said, voice brittle. Elias stopped a few feet from the porch. "I came to pay my respects." She let out a sharp laugh. "Respects? My son's dead because of you." He shook his head slowly. "He's dead because the system told him power meant domination. Because no one taught him that the badge doesn't make him right." She stepped down from the porch, eyes wet, voice rising. "You humiliated him. You turned the city against him. He made a mistake, but he wasn't evil." Elias's tone softened. "I didn't make him evil, Mrs. Kane. I made him visible." She froze, trembling. "You think that helps me sleep?" she snapped. "You think that brings him back?" Elias looked down, hands in his pockets. "No," he said quietly. "Nothing brings him back. But maybe it saves the next boy who thinks cruelty is strength." She took a step closer, tears cutting through the ash on her cheek. "You killed my son," she whispered. Elias met her eyes. "No, ma'am," he said gently. "The system did. I'm tearing it down before it kills anyone else's." She turned away, shoulders shaking, cigarette dropping to the ground. He waited in silence. After a long pause, she whispered, "Get off my property." He nodded once, turned, and walked back to his car. Behind him, her sobs blended with the hum of the streetlight. He drove slowly through the neighborhood, the weight of her grief pressing heavier than any protest chant. He understood her pain. He carried his own ghosts, the faces of men he'd lost in Mosul, the ones who never came home, each face a reminder that leadership always costs something, and truth collects its debt in silence. When he reached downtown, he parked by Lake Merritt and stepped out. The air was cooler now, the water still. Across the lake, he could see the reflection of city lights, gold, blue, red, rippling gently. A few joggers passed without recognizing him. For a moment, he let himself breathe, alone, unguarded. He whispered to the water, "How many more before this ends?" The reflection didn't answer. Back at headquarters, Isabel sat alone in her office, scrolling through reports. Use of force complaints had dropped significantly in the weeks since. Officers were adapting, some reluctantly, some sincerely. Neighborhood surveys showed the highest trust rating in a decade. Progress was real, measurable, but fragile. She looked at the numbers and smiled faintly. "You did it, Chief," she murmured. Then her phone buzzed. Elias's message flashed on screen. "Sometimes progress looks like a funeral before it feels like a sunrise." The following morning, headlines spread across local news. Union clash turns violent as reform divides Oakland PD. Pundits debated on television. Some called Elias a hero, others a traitor. Editorials split between admiration and outrage. He read none of them. Instead, he spent the day in the community, walking streets, shaking hands, visiting schools. Kids looked up to him now, not as a uniform, but as a man who'd stood his ground. That evening, he returned to headquarters. Isabel was waiting with the daily briefing. "The governor's office called," she said. "They want to showcase Oakland's reform model statewide." Elias smiled faintly. "Careful, they'll ruin it by making it a slogan." She chuckled softly. "Maybe, but it means the city's watching." He nodded. "Good. Let them." Outside, the sky turned amber. The smell of smoke from the burned mock Tesla still lingered faintly, but it no longer carried anger, just memory. Elias stood at his window again, watching the last light fade. The city below was restless but alive, uncertain but moving. He thought of Kane's mother, of the officers torn between old loyalties and new rules, of the quiet hope in the eyes of the children he'd met that morning. Change, he knew, was never clean. It was bruised, loud, misunderstood, but it was happening. He whispered softly, "The dark always fights hardest before the dawn." Then he turned off the lights, leaving the office in shadow, and walked out into the night, alone, but no longer afraid of it. Months later, Oakland awoke to sunlight so pure it seemed to wash the city clean. Along the shores of Lake Merritt, tents and banners lined the grass for the annual Unity Festival, a celebration reborn under a new name, Justice Day. Jazz carried through the morning air, mingling with laughter, clapping, and the rhythmic beat of drums. Vendors sold coffee. Children waved blue and gold flags that read, "Community First," and cameras from every major network set up along the water's edge. On the main stage stood a single podium draped with the city seal. Behind it, numerous gleaming white Tesla patrol cars formed a perfect crescent, mirrors catching the sun and throwing back a river of light. The new electric fleet, donated by Tesla in honor of transparency and reform, was a symbol of everything Oakland had survived. Elias Thorne arrived quietly, as he always did. Black suit, silver tie, and that steady calm that never left him. As he stepped out of his car, the crowd parted in murmured respect. Beside the stage stood Deputy Chief Isabel Vargas and Officer Theo Ramirez, promoted to community liaison. Both smiled when they saw him, the kind of proud, knowing smile that needs no words. "Morning, Chief," Theo said softly. Elias returned it with a nod. "Morning, son. Looks like we made it." As he took the stage, applause rose from the crowd, modest at first, then swelling until it filled the park. He didn't wave or grandstand. He waited for silence. When it came, he leaned into the microphone, voice low and deliberate. "Months ago, this city looked into a mirror and didn't like what it saw." The crowd quieted further. "We saw anger, division, fear, a system more loyal to its walls than its people. But we also saw courage, the kind that doesn't march for cameras, but stands firm in the dark when no one's watching." He paused, letting the wind carry the words. That courage came from officers who chose truth over tradition, from citizens who chose patience over vengeance, and from a community that chose hope when it had every reason not to. The screen behind him came to life, showing images of the months since his reforms began. Officers in classrooms teaching de-escalation workshops, residents attending monthly community councils, AI body cam audits conducted by civilian panels, and Theo Ramirez walking hand in hand with neighborhood children on patrol. Elias continued, "When I started this journey, I promised transparency. I promised to reform. But what I learned is that reform isn't a destination. It's maintenance. It's a daily fight against the temptation to fall back into comfort." He looked toward the first row, where city officials, local pastors, and small business owners sat shoulder to shoulder. "We reduced use of force complaints dramatically," he said. "Response times improved, civilian oversight expanded, but none of that matters if we forget why we started. Justice isn't a report. It's a habit. One we must practice every day." A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. Isabel stepped forward and handed him a small blue box from the city. "Chief," she said. Inside was a medal, the mayor's honor of civic courage. Elias looked at it for a long moment, then closed the lid gently. "I appreciate this," he said quietly into the microphone. "But courage doesn't belong to one man. It belongs to everyone who stood when it was easier to kneel." Laughter and applause followed, warm and genuine. The mayor stepped forward next, pinning a smaller ribbon on his lapel, then shook his hand firmly. "You changed the culture, Elias," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "You gave this city back its conscience." He smiled faintly. "No, ma'am. The city just remembered it had one." The band began to play softly behind him, horns swelling in slow harmony. Elias turned back to the microphone. "This festival isn't about me, or the department, or politics. It's about the promise that justice belongs to all of us, or to none of us. And I'll say this once, for the record. I've been called a traitor, a fool, even a coward. But if standing up to abuse earns me those names, I'll wear them gladly." The crowd stood to their feet, applause rolling like thunder. Some shouted his name. Others simply wept. For a moment, Elias looked overwhelmed. He pressed one hand to his heart and bowed his head. Behind him, the screen changed again. Footage of Kane and Keller's trial verdicts, the reinstatement of oversight boards, and community programs named after those lost to misconduct. Then came a photo of the Unity Candlelight Vigil, where both black and white families stood together along Foothill Boulevard, holding candles in the rain. The caption read, "For every name we never knew." When the music faded, Elias stepped forward again. His voice grew softer, almost intimate. "Every day, I walk past the wall of honor in our headquarters. I see faces of officers who gave their lives in the line of duty. But I also think of the faces we never framed, the ones who died in silence, in custody, in fear. This medal I'm wearing isn't for me. It's for them." He paused, eyes glistening. "Because justice isn't a title. It's a daily fight." He stepped back as the crowd rose once more, the applause carrying across the lake like rolling waves. Theo and Isabel joined him on stage, standing on either side, together. The three of them faced the sea of people. The morning sun broke through the last thin clouds and poured gold across the stage. Cameras clicked in rapid bursts. Children waved their flags higher. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang. Later that afternoon, as the festival wound down, Elias walked alone to the water's edge. The music had faded, the crowd thinning. The city skyline shimmered across the calm lake. He crouched by the water, pulled a note from his pocket, the same one he'd placed months ago under the memorial wall, and read it silently. "Reform begins here." He refolded it, pressed it to his chest, and smiled. Isabel approached quietly from behind. "You should rest, Chief," she said. He turned, smiling faintly. "After today, maybe I finally can." She looked out at the horizon. "You know, you kept your word." He shook his head gently. "No, the people kept it for me." They stood in silence for a while, the breeze ruffling the water, the sounds of laughter still echoing faintly from the distance. Elias looked up at the row of Tesla patrol cars glinting in the sun, each one symbolizing a promise kept. "This is what daylight looks like," he said softly, as the Sobin began to sink, painting the sky with orange and rose. He walked back toward the stage. The last few volunteers were packing up banners. One of them, a young girl, maybe 12, ran up and called, "Chief Thorne, thank you." He smiled, touched her shoulder, and said, "Don't thank me. Just keep watching." She grinned and ran back to her mother. Elias stopped at the edge of the stage, looked out one last time at the lake, and whispered a quiet prayer. Not for victory, but for vigilance. The work was far from over. Reform wasn't a finish line, it was a horizon that kept moving forward. He knew tomorrow would bring new challenges, new resistance, new noise, but for the first time in a long while, he felt peace. Not the silence of surrender, but the calm after a storm that had finally broken. The cameras caught one last shot of him, standing in the sunlight, hand over his heart, eyes lifted toward the bright sky. Then the screen faded to black and white text appeared over the music. "For every name we never knew." Thank you for watching this story. If you believe justice still matters, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so more people will see that truth always finds its light.